SGA's Thunder roll to the NBA Finals. The Pacers have the Knicks on the brink. Yes, this is the Canada Hoops Daily Podcast. My name is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Big thanks to you wherever you are listening to this pod, as we appreciate you all for rocking with us on whatever iteration, whatever platform, whatever screen you happen to be watching or listening to. Thank you. As mentioned, my name is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I know we've been in different places the last little bit, but the best way to keep up with what we do here is to make sure you follow me on the socials, and that is at Sheldon Alexander on IG and YouTube, and at Shell Alexander on the app formerly known as Twitter. But we are here to talk ball because there's lots going on and lots from a Canadian perspective. And listen, when the stories are big enough, we're here to talk about basketball. And I think the OKC Thunder advancing to the NBA Finals, I'm going to say that again. The Oklahoma City Thunder have advanced to the NBA Finals after they have defeated the Minnesota Timberwolves 124-94. That's a beatdown, kids. An absolute beatdown as the Thunder roll to the NBA Finals. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, what a season that he's had. Already we can think about the fact that Shai has taken this step into being, not only the best Canadian basketball player that we've ever seen. And I know it seems like it's almost rare, or it seems kind of weird to be talking about this, because Steve Nash, just because you say one thing about some person doesn't mean that you're taking away from another. You know what I mean? So it almost feels as if, like, just because we're talking about Shai in this rarefied air, that you're taking away from something that Steve Nash did, and that's not really the case. The way that I view this is just more how big time Canada basketball has become, to the fact that we have guys who are at the forefront of being at the front of the NBA. And that to me is just incredible. When you list the accolades of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and not only just becoming the MVP of the National Basketball Association, to quote a wise man, the best basketball players in the world, but the way that he's done it, the team that he's on, the run that these guys are on, like the fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder won 68 games this season, right? Like, think about that. I know there was a debate about who should be MVP or not, right? Like, I get it. And I understand there's a debate because people got to say things in the microphones every single day to make it seem like there's an argument. But we've never seen a team have this many wins, dominate the regular season, have a player who leads the league in scoring, and then try to debate on whether or not he is the MVP of the league. Like, it really wasn't that complicated. Like, we watched it. It's just because, he's not as all up in the videos as everyone else, as Ant-Man is, or, people in the States aren't as familiar with him because he plays in Oklahoma City as opposed to playing, for the Knicks or the Lakers or something like that. I also wonder, like, when we talk about Shai and just his popularity in the NBA, I wonder, like, why does it matter that he's Canadian? Do you know what I mean? Like, not that it's right, but I can understand the world in which people say, hey, well, Shohei Ohtani, it's difficult to relate to him. He speaks through a translator in baseball, and that makes it tough for fans to relate to him. And he's not in commercials, and he's not doing all this, and he's not in that. And, like, I not that I agree, but I can understand where that narrative comes from, right? Even, if you want to, I think Giannis is a great face of the NBA and a good ambassador, and he's fun, and he's a good family man, and all those other cliche type things people try to bring up. But because he's Greek, he can't be the face. Jokic doesn't really want that. So we understand that. But Shai, such a well-spoken, smart, great basketball player. He's smooth as ever. He's very charismatic when you get him on the mic in interviews. Like, all of these things, is it really that big of a deal to the US market that he's from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, as opposed to, I don't know, Atlanta? Like, I don't understand why that's such a big deal. Then add on top of the fact that he's just really, really good. This whole debate about who's the face of the NBA is so interesting to me because, obviously they've been trying to push it on the Ant, and there's this narrative in the NBA just because people, you've been blessed if you cover basketball for the last 20 plus years that you've had LeBron James that has given you endless topics of discussion for literally 20 years. And now that that's about to come to an end, people are kind of looking around at each other like, wait, we got to find some other topic to talk about other than the GOAT. Who's the GOAT, LeBron or MJ? Like, we got to find another topic to discuss. And to me, this conversation is so stupid on one end, because it's like the face of the NBA. I think Chuck said this a couple weeks ago. Face of the NBA is earned. Like, you win and then you become the face of the NBA. If you win consistently enough, you become the face of the NBA. The reason why people have been struggling to figure out who that next face is after Steph and LeBron and KD leave is because we haven't had any of these young guys win or make deep runs consistently enough in the playoffs. And once that happens, that will change. You mean to tell me that if Jason Tatum and the Celtics weren't back in the NBA Finals again this year, and I don't know if they win, but if they lose, whatever, like Jason Tatum obviously would be making that leap as to being the face of the NBA. If you win, and especially in a market like Boston that's super popular, that has all the primetime games, like that's how you become the face. We just live in this microwave culture where we want to hand these accolades to people and hand it to them right away. And I mean, dare I say, before they're even ready or before they've even proven anything, that you end up in scenarios where we're still waiting on Zion. We're still waiting on Ja Morant. And that's, I mean, I'm not saying it's never going to happen with those two guys, but it does seem a lot less likely to happen now as you see how their careers have gone to start, right? Whereas Shai, you have someone who's just been putting in the work, who's steadily been improving, who plays on a team with a bunch of young guys that are all happy for each other, that all work together, that play hard, that play defense. And yet we have to push this narrative to struggle to even name him MVP. Like, I get what Jokic did is insane. I totally get it and understand the numbers that he put up, and he dragged that team, to a game 7 against these guys, right? So it's like, I understand how good Nikola Jokic is. Everybody does. But never in my memory can I think of a team that has been this good, that had a guy that led the league in scoring, that also plays defense, because that's the other important part of this, right? Even when people try to bring up James Harden and what he was doing when he had his Rockets run, and I get that, but Shai plays the game on both ends of the floor, and that has to matter, right? I know we don't see defensive plays on IG and on our reels and TikTok and all that stuff every night, but there are two sides to the ball, two sides to the game, offense and defense. It's why I always kind of laugh when Giannis gets pushed down the MVP rankings every year, because Giannis is also a very imposing defender on top of doing everything offensively for his team. But SGA needs to be on a bigger stage. Maybe after they win this NBA championship, we're knocking on wood, because of course all of Canada would and should be rooting for the Oklahoma City Thunder and Shai to win the NBA championship. But it shouldn't be this difficult. And I'll bring it back closer to home. I think a lot of it, I'm going to almost call myself out here on something that I like to talk about, is worrying about what the American narratives are and having that like leak into Canada and how we cover Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or any other Canadian star. Shai undoubtedly is one of the best Canadian sports stories in the country right now, and has been for the last few years, right? Like when you think about winning the bronze medal at the World Cup, right? And then getting Canada into the Olympics for the first time in 20 years. Like, these are things that people who have been following the game of basketball in this country have been like wishing for, dreaming for, pleading for. And now you've seen it happen. You've seen it come to fruition. And then on top of that, not only with the Canada jersey on his back, but also in the NBA, continuing to develop, continuing to grow year in and year out to the point to where you win the MVP. Again, the best basketball players in the world. Better than Steph, better than LeBron, better than Giannis, better than Jokic, better than Luka. Like, this matters. And this guy should be all over our televisions. This guy should be leading every single sports show in the country. All of these things, it shouldn't be that difficult. And yet, why is it? I don't understand. Especially because Shai, as a dude, typically, how do I phrase this? The reason why I think Kawhi was so popular in Canada that one year that he had with the Raptors was because he was the quiet guy. You know what I mean? He wasn't loud. He wasn't like all up in the videos. He wasn't, me. He wasn't that kind of guy, And I think that resonated with a lot of this country that grew up with hockey culture of the team being first and very when you compare, I'm tiptoeing around when I shouldn't be tiptoeing around saying this, but we know the differences between the NBA and the NHL, right? And the way that the game is marketed, the way that the players are marketed, and, LeBron is LeBron and everything's going to be about LeBron and it's me. And you can take the brand of LeBron and move it from Cleveland to Miami to LA to, Cleveland again in the middle of all that. And it's still the business of LeBron leading every NBA show there is. And hockey not being like that. And that's mostly what gets the headlines in this country. The popularity of Kawhi, I would say, is the same thing as what Shai should be, because this is a guy that just puts the work in, that plays hard, plays night in, plays night out, plays defense, is a good dude, reps for his country. Like, all of these things add up to what should lead us as a country being behind this guy. And I wonder, because I'm interested to see just what the coverage is going to be for the next couple of weeks here as they hone in on possibly winning an NBA championship, because this is one of the biggest stories in Canadian sports. And right now, but I'm saying over the last however many years. If Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is able to lead the Oklahoma City Thunder to an NBA title in the same season that he wins the NBA's MVP award, in the same season that, you would assume he's going to win finals MVP, a year after leading Canada to the Olympics, and what would they finish? 5th, right? Their highest finish for the men's team in how many years, right? All of these things. And then a year after the bronze medal at the World Cup, all of these things, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is just continuing to build his resume as one of the best Canadian athletes we've ever seen. And I feel like the talk behind it needs to get a lot louder, especially in this country. And I'm saying that separately to the prior conversation about Shai being the face of the NBA, because I feel like if we do our part here and take care of ours, then being the face of the NBA doesn't matter, because he could be the face of this country. And that's amazing. That's really, really, really cool. And that's a huge deal, because these are heights that people never really seen or never really thought to be possible. It was cool hearing Steve Nash talk about Shai and talk about, just how good he's been and how much better Steve Nash thinks Shai was than he was at that point of his career. And just seeing the development continue to grow on a yearly basis has been just such a cool ride. And I think that, we watched Steve Nash win back-to-back MVPs, and obviously Canada was rooting for the Phoenix Suns to try to break through and make it to the NBA Finals. And we know that didn't happen. But at the end of the day, what a ride that was. How cool was it watching Steve Nash continue to dominate the NBA and just improve? And there's so much going on in the NBA at that point in terms of the 7 seconds or less offense and the run and gun and how they were changing the league. And, Steve Nash was such an integral part in growing the game of basketball in this country. And when you add that to, the Raptors just had their celebration of Vince Carter and, retiring Vince's jersey and the 30th year anniversary of the Raptors. This is a culmination of all of that. The 30 years of the Raptors, Vince Carter making the Hall of Fame, Steve Nash's back-to-back MVPs. All of these things lead to where we are now, to where we're talking about a Canadian basketball player on the brink of winning the MVP and the NBA Finals, who would be the first person to do that, I think, since Steph, one of those Warriors years, right? And so we're seeing things that we don't really see in the NBA happen that often, and it's happening from a kid from Hamilton, Ontario. That to me is something that deserves to be celebrated. That to me is something that we in this country need to make sure that we are putting on a pedestal every single day. Steve Nash, part of Steve Nash's lore is also just like the great guy that he is, right? Like good peoples that he is. Maybe what others will say, the Canadian in him of being just this polite, nice guy. And I see those same qualities in Shai. Every single interview you see Shai give, he's very quick to point out his teammates. Part of that whole, vibe that they got of being this kind of AAU team, and, whoever's getting interviewed, the rest of the team standing behind them and they're throwing the towels on, and whoever's doing the interview, well, everyone's in the interview because that's how we roll. We're a squad. All that stuff, is very counter to a lot of what we see in the NBA. And I think instead of, getting into this narrative, which I'll start bashing from now, even before we get to our finals preview next week. But this whole, oh, well, if it's not the Knicks in the finals, like people are going to be mad. OKC versus the Pacers and small markets. And why the hell do you care about what markets are in the NBA finals? As long as it's not your team, if it's good basketball, it's good basketball. And if you like basketball, you would like watching the Pacers and the Thunder play the game of basketball. If you like basketball, you would like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There's enough reasons for you to watch an NBA Finals with the Oklahoma City Thunder and with the Indiana Pacers. Like the style of play, if you just swapped out their jerseys to be LA and New York, like, is that what you need to happen? Like the Lakers are the Lakers aren't even close to as good as the Oklahoma City Thunder, but you're telling me you'd rather have the Lakers in the finals just because it's the Lakers and LeBron? I think you're telling on yourself if that's the case. That just means you don't really like basketball, and that's okay. But let's just be honest about what the conversation is. Because if you actually like basketball, then this is going to be incredible. This is an incredible rise from watching the Oklahoma City Thunder, a small market team, develop their team in the right way, make a trade in terms of getting rid of their superstars in Russell Westbrook and Paul George, getting picks, acquiring assets year in, year out, hitting on your draft picks, developing your draft picks, to now having it culminate and making it back to the NBA Finals. Like, isn't that what everybody wanted? Right? Like, isn't that like people hated the super teams? You didn't like LeBron jumping on waves from one team to the next. You didn't like Anthony Davis jumping on LeBron's wave, right? We didn't like any of that stuff. But now that you have this small market team that was able to do it, quote unquote, the right way through drafting, through developing, they're a young team, super young team, and they're in the NBA Finals. Now people want to complain. I'm waiting to call out all these people. It's okay. You just don't like basketball. And that's fine. Because the other part of this, right? OKC making it to the finals, Shai winning MVP, is that the mid-range game is back, baby. SGA, okay, has brought the mid-range game back to the forefront. And to me, that is a beautiful thing. Because if you follow me and you follow, the basketball content, you know that one of the things that I've been talking about for a while is the fact that the stat nerds have tricked a lot of y'all into telling you that the mid-range game is a bad game. The mid-range shot is a bad shot. And I've always thought that is ridiculous. And I will continue to think that that is ridiculous because it is. Because I always go back to Kenny Smith's old theory that he would say all the time. Sometimes NBA basketball is really not that complicated. You get into the playoffs and it's, keep the game close. At the end of the game, it's my best player versus your best player. Good offense or great offense can beat great defense because you just can't stop that player. And we're seeing that with Shai in the mid-range game being back. And it's a beautiful thing to watch because in this league where now the math nerds have told us just shoot threes and take layups, what happens when you get into the playoffs, right? And the difference between the regular season and the playoffs is that you're playing the same team over and over again. So now there's a scouting report. So now I know what your best moves are. I know which direction you want to go to. I know that you shooting a 3-point shot, okay, your percentage might be 38%. But now when I'm contesting your shot, because I know where you want the ball, how you're going to shoot the ball, what your plays are. And if I take that down to closer to 30 and you just want to shoot threes all the time, it's not going to work. Meanwhile, the mid-range game, the reason why it's a better shot is because it's a higher percentage shot. And we've told superstars somehow that they shouldn't be using the mid-range shot because a 3 is worth more than a 2. And I will continuously be on this hill that's great if you're Steph Curry, but not everybody is Steph Curry. But we've told everybody that they're Steph Curry. And I think Anthony Davis and what happened to the Thunder, or not the Thunder, the T-Wolves in this series is a great example of that. Because Anthony Edwards, after working with the Olympic team, he talked about how he played with Steph, obviously, and would practice after practice with Steph and shoot a lot of threes and work on his game. And we saw that translate into his 3-point attempts going up. And it was a huge topic of conversation at the start of the year. And of course, he finished the year, shooting 40%, shooting the most threes in the league. And great. Awesome. But now what happens when you get into the playoffs? And the playoffs really become, can your best player win you a game? Can your best player, before we even get to winning the game, can your best player keep you in the game? Because there's going to be moments in a basketball game where, hey, you're just trying to weather the storm. The other team's on a run. You're trying to make a comeback, whatever it is. But there are moments in high-level, high-stakes playoff games where you just need to get a bucket. And can you, as a star player, get a bucket? And a lot of times that's going to come in the mid-range package. And Shai has figured out how to do that and do that at a high level. High enough that, again, it's won him the MVP of this league. The best basketball players in the world. And Ant-Man taking his game and making it, it's only going to be layups or threes. Well, first off, most defenses are going to cut off a lot of your ability to get all the way to the rim in the playoffs because defenses are just better in the playoffs. Players are more focused. The better players are playing more often. You're playing the better teams. Typically, the better teams play better defense, i.e. it's harder to score. It's why you're going to be more reliant on your best players when you need them the most. And transitioning to just being solely layups or solely threes, you're going to end up settling for a lot more threes. And if your 3-point shot is not going that night, you're going to lose and that's it. I saw D Wade talking about this and he was saying, Ant needs to I think he called it go to hell ball, where basically it's just screw this. Our team's losing. I need to get buckets and it's just on you to just do it. And it might look ugly. It might look terrible. It might be a couple bad shots here or there. But the point is your job is to save your team. It's just what it is. It's just the reality of this. When we're talking about the highest levels, you're talking about the face of the NBA. You're talking about winning a championship. You're talking about being the MVP. Those are the levels of between good and great. Can you get a bucket when your team needs it the most? And Ant-Man struggled in this series to do that. Shai did not. And another narrative was this whole stupid, foul hunting or foul baiting or whatever you want to call it that, this like the nerds were talking about. And, again, social media and Twitter not being a real place. But what I'm saying is these narratives get put out. The nerds that produce these shows look onto Twitter to see what's trending and what they could be talking about instead of watching the actual games. That's why I thought it was so good that Shai came out saying, like, first off, I've shot more free throws in other parts of my career than this season, but it's just because we're winning now, and now it's getting more attention. But also, there's other players that have always shot more free throws than we've seen Shai shoot right now. I mean, Luka, if we watch Luka last year, I didn't feel like people were dissing Luka's just blatantly foul hunting. We know about James Harden. We know about LeBron. Like, we've seen this before. In big games, part of your job is to just get to the line and stop runs at certain points. Is that foul baiting? Is that foul hunting? Sure. But it's also smart basketball because sometimes you need to stop a run. Sometimes as a star player, you just need to get a bucket for your team. And that's not going to be a step back three, Jason Tatum. It's not going to be a step back three, Anthony Edwards. But it's so crazy to me, this discussion as we're watching, we tie this all together. And Shai has just been such a breath of fresh air to my frustration anyways, with watching the NBA the last couple years in terms of how he's doing it with his team, how this team is developed with, giving credit to J-Dub and Chet. And I mean, the team is just so good, but it's led by Shai, and the way that he just gets buckets, the way that you watched him even through these playoffs. Because if you take it back to last year, you take it back to even the start of the Denver series, Shai struggled during crunch time. And you saw the team, the player, the coach all develop and figure it out along the way. How to take the double team, how to make the right pass, when to start, when to go, how to get to my spots and get my turnaround Jimmy that can't be stopped. And I wonder if this will lead more players, more superstars into working that back into their bag, as the kids like to say. Because the mid-range game, and listen, I'm always going to equate things back to Kawhi and the championship Raptors year, because obviously that means a lot in this market and to the people that listen to me talk on a microphone. But that Kawhi year, it was so beautiful to watch a dude just have the whole game under control. Oh, we can keep it within 6. And as long as it's within 6, down the stretch, we know that we can get a steal. We can get the stops. And then I know that I can get the buckets to win us this game. And I think that's what you're seeing here with Shai. No, I'm not saying the defense is as good as Kawhi. No, I'm not comparing the teams. I'm comparing like the style. Because the difference with this OKC team as well is they play defense. And part of the reason why people have had such a difficult time in anointing them or rooting them on this season isn't just the fact of the market that they play in, or they don't have the headliner name that non-NBA heads would be, attached to. It's a style of play that, if we're being honest, doesn't get a lot of headlines because they play defense as well. It's a team game. They play deep, like they play a lot of guys, but also, most importantly, they play defense. I saw the stat that someone put up the other day, and it was that this OKC team, their point differential heading into the NBA Finals. And basically, it's like OKC, one of those Warriors teams, two of MJ's teams, and the 2019 Raptors in terms of point differential. Because OKC is just smashing teams right now. Like, absolutely smashing teams in these playoffs. And to see that, to me, with the team led by a Canadian, and also the defense, we're talking about defense, I got to talk about the other Canadian on their team, Lou Dort, who's also been just incredible as well. But I think, all of these things make us want to just because it's not flashy, right? It's not flashy. And I think that now being able to just take these guys in at the level that they're on and understand and put it into perspective. Like I saw this stat from Bill Simmons. He says OKC is 8-1 at home at the playoffs. They won those 8 games by 51, 19, 43, 7, 32, 36, 15, and 30. In the one loss, Denver game 1, they were up 9 with 3 minutes left and lost by 2. So they're plus 231 in 9 home games in the playoffs. That is insane. Absolutely insane. And I think all this talk about OKC this year, you can't beg people to actually like the game of basketball. You just hope to get them in, get them to sit down and be like, oh, I like this. This is good. Because the way that the headlines work, the way that, here's a tip for people wondering why, when you talk about, oh, why is NBA coverage so bad? It's because everyone's chasing the algorithm. Anyone creating content, 99% of people creating content are chasing the algorithm. So when you're chasing the algorithm, you're going to talk about the Lakers or LeBron more than you're going to talk about OKC. And this is why one of my pet peeves of things that are just dying in our society, being journalism and sports journalism, is just the fact that sometimes I just need people to tell me about basketball and what's going on the court. And forget about what the jerseys are, but why should I be watching Shai? Why should I be watching OKC? And to me, this should be a team that should be so easy for everybody to be able to get behind. But at the same time, you know what? Just sit down and watch and enjoy. Because my only plea is to people in Canada covering the NBA, covering the story, covering sports in this country. Make sure you're giving enough props to Shai and Lou Dort and this Oklahoma City Thunder team, because this is a team that has built it the right way, quote unquote. This is a superstar that does it the right way, that is not all about him, that tries to put his other teammates on, that talks constantly about his other teammates, that's focused on winning and not just the individual accolades. Someone that we've seen put the Canada jersey on his chest when we had a long 20-year gap in between people and our best players, having to beg our best players to put the Canada across their chest and rep for this country. And Shai's done that. So now in return, I really do feel like it's easy for us now to just jump on board and root for Shai and the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the NBA championship, because it's an amazing sports story. And as I said earlier, if it's that difficult for you to figure out, maybe you just don't like basketball. And that's okay. Just be honest about what's going on right now. Just be honest. Because this is a great, great, great story. This is a great Canadian story. This is a great, just sports story. And I can't wait to see the Oklahoma City Thunder win the NBA championship. But I guess the next question is, who are they going to play? And as we move on from one team to the next, we move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. And the Pacers lead the Knicks 3-1. And this series has been interesting to me in a different way because, so the Knicks blow game 1 in just horrendous fashion, right? And you had the Halliburton choke sign and all that. And this series could obviously very easily be 2-2, right? And instead it's 3-1. But watching these two teams play has been so fascinating because as much as the Pacers, and if you watch the Pacers for the second half of the season, they played really, really, really well. They played like one of the best teams in the league. So it shouldn't be that much of a surprise or as much of a surprise that they're contending to be in the NBA Finals, right? But the way that they play, the reason why they're successful is because they play at such a crazy pace and they force you into playing their style. They run up and down It's all fast break. They got the perfect point guard for it in Tyrese Halliburton to just push the ball. They got the right amount of athletes. They got a lot of depth so they can play fast. And that is the complete opposite of the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks are not deep, and the New York Knicks can't play as fast as Indiana because they don't have enough players or they don't play enough players. But the funny part about this series is sometimes I'm sitting there watching some of these games, and it's just like, what kind of shot is that? They'll just come down the floor and jack up a three. Nobody passed the ball. Multiple Brunson possessions over and over again where he battles to bring the ball up the floor. He just dribble. And then he's going around the screen, doesn't pass it at all, and is just forcing up a tough shot in the lane. And maybe it goes in, maybe it doesn't. But it's like, bro, you just worked way too hard for that bucket. And then guess what? Now you're too tired to play defense on the other end, and you give it right back up very easily because it's swing, ball movement, easy bucket. But sometimes it's just bad basketball. Like Indy could have just blown them out the last game and the game before that, but they play with their food, right? Halliburton will just come down and I haven't shot in a while, so let me just shoot a three for no reason. And it's just, I don't get it. And they shoot it early in the shot clock too. It's just really strange. And I wonder where this series is going. Like, I don't think that the Knicks, to come back from 3-1 down is very difficult to do. And I don't think the Knicks have the ability to do so. Major credit, major props if they are able to do so, like big time credit. I just don't see it happening because I feel like if Indy were down 3-1, I could see Indy coming back just because, okay, Indy just figured out this is how we need to play. But they always say styles make fights, right? And I think this is one where it's a bad matchup for the Knicks because the Knicks rely too heavily on about 5 or 6 guys. Like you see Tom Thibodeau out here playing now, DeLon Wright getting minutes and Landry Shamet getting minutes. And it's like, how are you now playing these bench guys in the Eastern Conference Finals? And these guys were not getting minutes at all during the regular season. That makes no sense. But obviously you're seeing them get more success with opening up their bench because Brunson is tired. How can he not be? He has Nesmith guarding him full court the entire game. And if it's not Nesmith, then it's Nembhard. And the way that the Pacers play, they're deep, they'll cover you full court, and they want to run. They're running off makes and misses. And when you do that against a team that is playing their starters and maybe 6 guys a lot of minutes, that's going to catch up to you, especially the longer a series goes. And that's why I think the New York Knicks are ultimately in trouble. They just have to work way too hard to stay in a game, to make a comeback. Like all of these things, it shouldn't be that difficult for the Knicks, but when you don't have a bench, and I also think they don't do themselves any favors on offense. Like I think Tibbs is a solid coach, right? But the problem is if you're a defensive coach, but you also have to play Brunson and Cat, who are not really good defenders, your defense isn't going to be that good. So if your defense isn't that good and you're a defensive coach, now your offense, which isn't your strong suit to begin with, also isn't going to be that good. Well, then guess what that means? You're probably going to lose. And I think that's a point that we're at here with the New York Knicks because their offense down the stretch, a lot of times, like it's just Brunson save us. And that's not fair, right? It's not. Like Brunson is struggling to score the whole game. And then the end of the game comes and it's just Brunson go. And if you notice the game that the Knicks won, it was Cat that was able to put in the work, to lead them back, to get them over the hump and actually have them win that game, right? But that's few and far between. Cat finds himself in dumb foul trouble in the last game, and that obviously deters them from having the victory in the last game. But the way that the Knicks run their offense, it should be way better. It should be way better. Like Mikal Bridges, we know can score 20 a night. We know that Cat can put up numbers. We obviously know Brunson can as well, but the way that Brunson scores, it's more off of usage, right? It's because he has a high usage. The ball is in his hands all the time. They need to run more plays. They need to run more sets throughout the entire game. Like, I know the last game they tried to run some sets for Bridges late in the game and it just didn't work. And I just feel like it's too disjointed with the Knicks. And it kind of sucks because you know what? I wanted to see the Knicks make the NBA Finals. I'm happy for Knicks fans. I think that's really cool seeing a tortured fan base that supports their team get a chance to celebrate in the streets, have a party. And maybe this is a tortured Leaf fan in me that's saying that. But, like it was cool to see Knicks fans be happy. I thought that was really dope. But I don't think it's going to go well for them. They just ran in. It's just a bad matchup for them. It's just a really bad matchup for them against this Pacers team. And, this Pacers team led by Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam. And, the talk about, is Halliburton a superstar? And I'm going to relate this back to our Shai conversation earlier. Why is there such a rush to crown people? Halliburton will become a superstar when he tells us he's a superstar, not because he has a couple good games in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, we know that it's back-to-back years the Pacers have made the Eastern Conference Finals, and credit to them. That's cool. But at the end of the day, Halliburton, someone who started off the regular season terribly, you're not going to play well in the second half of the season and then have a good playoff and then talk to me about being a superstar. The difference, again, between star and superstar, good and great, there's levels to this. And this is why Shai is in that superstar status, because he plays games, doesn't take games off. He started off well. He played well in the middle of the season. He played well at the end of the season. He's playing well in the playoffs. Halliburton basically took the first couple months of the season off. So I hope you have a good energy for now that the playoffs have come around, because your team needed you. And this is not to say that Halliburton isn't an all-star, because of course he is. He was on the Olympic team, right? So like they don't just throw you, especially not on that Olympic team where you had KD and Steph and LeBron all coming back to play. So Halliburton being on that team, like, that means something, right? He's obviously like knocking on the door of NBA superstardom. But doing the choke sign, having like one incredible game and a couple like pretty decent games doesn't necessarily make you a superstar. You know what will make you a superstar? Being in championship contention multiple years in a row. Because even if you go back to last year, them making the conference finals, people didn't really take them seriously as championship contenders. And I would even say this season, although they made it again to the conference finals and are on the brink of making the NBA finals, I still don't think that people take them seriously as championship contenders until maybe right now. And I think that as long as that's the narrative, you're going to have to pause on who's a superstar, who's not a superstar. But I think, it's almost like, superstars kick down the door. Like, you can't deny me anymore. Like Ant-Man, the reason why Ant-Man and the Rush was there, you had these moments multiple years in a row where he's taken down KD, where he's taking down Steph Curry, where he's making all these crazy highlight plays throughout the whole regular season and leading a Minnesota Timberwolves team to the conference finals. And I think just the difference between the Pacers and the T-Wolves, I think the Pacers just have a deeper team. So as good as Halliburton is, as good as Siakam is, the reality of that team's success is based off the sum of the parts. All of those players together, right? All of those players together is what makes Indiana good. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Right? That's how the saying goes. My point is that Indy is deep. And when you're able to go like 8, 9 players deep and you're getting crazy performances like you did with Aaron Nesmith in game 1 to bring you back with the 6 threes he hit in the fourth quarter, right? Or you're getting the Nemhard game, or in game 5, you get the Benedict Mathurin game, right? Like all of these things. And Siakam had the game 4 or the game 3, right? My point is, It's not the same guy every single night. And that's why this Pacers team is good. They're good because they're deep. And just because you might be the best player of a really deep team doesn't necessarily make you a superstar. It doesn't have to make you a superstar. It just means you're the leader of a really good team, which is also good, which is also something we like. We don't have to be on this rush to put him. Is he top 10? Is he top? Like, no. Let him get there. Let him cook. Let him develop. And it kind of reminds me of the Raptors, right? Because, people are talking about, I see the whispers of Raptors fans and, well, here's OG on the Knicks and here's Siakam on the Pacers and, and Freddie and what he did with the turnaround of the Rockets and how come it couldn't work in Toronto with Scotty Barnes. And it's like the same thing I talked about at the time. I was doing the pod at the time. I was doing it after every Raps game. And at the time we talked about the fact that basketball, no matter what, you need a hierarchy. Role definition is the most important thing in the game of basketball. And for teams that win, it's even more important. In fact, that's probably why they win, because everyone has a clear role definition. Who's the top dog? Who's the big dog? Who gets the ball when? Who needs to make the defensive stops? Who's going to go lock down the other team's best player? Who's getting everyone involved? All of these things. That was the Raptors' biggest problems. You had a bunch of guys that were relatively around the same level of good, but the hierarchy wasn't clear cut. And once you started thinking, oh, well, hold on, is this Scotty's team now? Or is this still going through Pascal? But wait, OG wants his shots. But wait, Fred's the point guard, and now you're taking the ball out of his hand. Too many things going on. And that's why the Raptors team didn't work. It wasn't about, them not being good players. We know they were good players. It's just about having the hierarchy set. And, that's really a coaching thing, which Nick Nurse, I'm not knocking Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse is obviously a good coach and knows what he's doing. But I would argue telling Scotty Barnes and OG and Pascal that they need to shoot threes when they're not good 3-point shooters might not be indicative of trying to win basketball games. But that's just me. Story for another day, right? I do think, though, that it is interesting watching all these players that used to be on the Raptors, and it's like, okay, but you wouldn't pay Pascal the max. Fred was making 40 mil. OG makes 30 something mil. Like all those guys still being on the Raptors, where would that team, like what's the ceiling for that team if they were all still together in Toronto? And also a part of that team that didn't work was the lack of depth. Because if you look at, the Knicks and Pacers are maybe the perfect example of this. You're either going to have high level, you have Brunson, you have Towns, you have Bridges, you have OG, you have Josh Hart. Josh Hart does dirty work. OG does the dirty work. But then you have Towns, Bridges, and Brunson, who are relatively the same level of talent, but the hierarchy is set. It's Brunson, you go, right? You look at the Pacers, Pascal goes to that team, and it's not Pascal's team. Pascal does very well on the team. You have Halliburton leading the charge, but also if you pay attention, you have Pascal playing in a way where he had his most success in Toronto, which is running the floor. I'll always go back to the championship year. Pascal was at his best when he was running the floor, leaking out, getting easy layups. He gets like a good, 6 to 8 points, sometimes 10 points, just off layups, running the floor, getting on the glass, doing all the extra stuff, not being in ISO mode, spin cycle mode, or even shooting threes mode. So, hey, listen, if you're a Raptors fan and you're looking at all this and you're getting kind of nostalgic and thinking, could this have been us? I don't think so. But the way I do think you should be looking at this is the Pacers. Look at some of the teams in the East, right? So Tatum's out next year. So the Celtics won't be as good. The Sixers are still banking on Joel Embiid and Paul George, so they won't be that good. Dame Lillard is out next year. So who knows what's going on with the Bucks and Giannis. The Knicks, who knows how they're going to react after this loss, because there's whispers of, do they get KD? Do they get Giannis? Who knows what's going on there? So the Knicks will be okay. The Pacers will be okay. We saw a big time season. The Cavs had their year, but they folded. And let's be honest, nobody's really afraid of the Cavs, right? Nobody's afraid of the Cavs. So then you're at Detroit. And I bring all this up to say, well, how far is any team from Detroit, from the Pacers, from the Cavs? And I'm not even saying being able to beat the Cavs or beat the Pacers, but just give them a run, give them a go. Because I think the Pistons could give those teams a go. So how far are you from being the Pistons? You look down, you see the Orlando Magic. They could be 1-2 moves away. You know, the Miami Heat, who knows what's going on there. Atlanta dealt with some injuries, but they could be a move or two away. The Bulls, who knows? But I'm saying if you're a Raptors fan, the way that you should be looking at this is if you make a couple moves, and if Brandon Ingram comes back and is able to be healthy, and you get some of these pieces to click, you hope you get something from your number 9 pick in this upcoming draft. You hope that one of your young guys, you just need one of your young guys in terms of Grady, in terms of Jacoby, like you need one, and Ochai, you need one of those dudes to pop and be really good for you. Be a good, consistent, contributing member of winning basketball. How far are you from those teams? That would be the shining light that I would give to Raptors fans. Because it's not that far away. You're a couple moves away. Like, look at what Detroit did. Detroit brought in Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr. Like, they just brought in some vets, some grown-ups, and then boom, you're in the middle of the Eastern Conference race. I'm pretty sure the Toronto Raptors fan base would take that at this point, no? I think so. I was going to talk about the Pat McAfee thing for a bit here, just because I thought that was funny. Pat McAfee yelling at the celeb row. And I'll get to it quickly just because I'm sure people have seen it by now. But basically, McAfee did a wrestling promo during the Pacers game where he was chirping the celebs, Chalamet, Spike Lee, Ben Stiller. He's chirping them and he's like, let's send these sons, what do you say? Sons of bitches back home to New York where they came from or whatever, with their ears ringing. And he's getting the crowd cheering, whatever. And he says that Chalamet gave him like a smile, like he knew what was coming, that there's some chirping coming. But he said he didn't think Ben Stiller liked it. And I saw the clip from Ben Stiller on a Knicks pod. And Ben Stiller's like, oh, well, you know, I kind of think he should come to New York and we should put him on the big screen and maybe they can show him like punting or whatever. And I was like, yo, why is my guy just snapping him like that? But then I thought like, well, is Ben Stiller probably looking at Pat McAfee like, who's this guy? Like, I paid a lot of money to come cheer on my team in your building and cool. And I get that, but you don't need to be calling me a bitch or calling me a son of a bitch while I'm watching my team play. Like, I didn't pay racks on racks on racks to have someone swear at me on a mic on a big screen. Like, what sense does that make? What planet are we on right now? And you could say you're joking and it's a joke and it's McAfee and wrestling promo and all that, but nah, we don't play like that. And especially when the flip side of if he came to New York and men's are trolling him, or we're just talking about, you know, where's the line? Who gets to decide that? I'm not saying that he should be offended by that. I'm not saying that, you know, McAfee can't do that. I'm just saying I liked the troll back from Ben Stiller in terms of like, who is this guy? Like, he's a punter? I just thought that was funny. I found that funny. And I'm sure McAfee would find it funny, or maybe he'd be offended by it because obviously he's a big media star now, right? But that doesn't mean anything to Ben Stiller. That's almost like there's a difference in money, right? Like, what's the difference between a 4.0 and a 4.6? It's probably Ben Stiller's money to Pat McAfee money, right? That'd be my guess. Or Chalamet money, or Spike Lee money to McAfee money. Like, I just found it funny. I don't know. I found that funny. Hopefully you found some of this pod funny, or you enjoyed it on some level, a little bit of a level, a big level, a small level. I don't know. Thank you for tuning in though, because we've been doing this every once in a while during the playoffs, and I do know we will have a season preview coming up next week. But make sure you follow along on socials, as mentioned earlier. You can follow me at Shai Alexander on the app formerly known as Twitter, or Sheldon Alexander on Instagram or on YouTube. Follow Canada Hoops Daily on Instagram and on Twitter. You can find some videos there. Some stuff we'll have there for sure. Next week's pod, I think might be doing it on a different platform, but stay tuned to the socials for that. Either way, I'll put it out there. So if you follow me on socials, you'll be able to find the pods. But really appreciate the people rocking with us here, because this is a lot of fun. I enjoy talking ball, and this is a moment where we need to band together and get behind our guy, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, because he's doing big things right now. I think that we need to get behind him. I know. Key rep for us. We're going to rep for him all the way to the NBA Finals and beyond. I just think it's really cool. So you know what? We get on a mic and we talk about it. Again, thanks again to the people rocking with the podcast, whether you are on Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. Make sure the YouTube page, just search Sheldon Alexander. You'll find all our Canada Hoops Daily content there. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Just look up Canada Hoops Daily or On Blast Podcast. We got you covered there as well. And of course, as mentioned, you can follow me on all of the socials as mentioned before. But as I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is Canada Hoops Daily Podcast, as always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.